Hashtag the night shift at Walmart 4637. Marcus had been working the night shift at Walmart for 3 months when he first noticed something wasn't right. Store 4637 sat on the outskirts of town, a massive concrete box surrounded by cracked asphalt and flickering streetlights that cast sickly yellow pools in the darkness. It was 2:47 a.m. when he heard the first announcement over the intercom system. The voice was distorted, crackling through the ancient speakers with an electronic wheeze that made his skin crawl. Attention shoppers. The store will be closing in 13 minutes. Please make your final purchases and proceed to the nearest exit. Marcus paused, his hand frozen on the price gun he'd been using to tag clearance items in aisle 7. The store had been closed since midnight. He was alone except for Janet, the overnight security guard, and old Pete, who restocked the produce section. "Janet," he called out, his voice echoing through the empty aisles. "Did you hear that announcement?" No response. The fluorescent lights above hummed their monotonous tune, casting everything in harsh white light that seemed to leach the color from the world. Between the towering shelves of merchandise, shadows pooled like dark water. Marcus abandoned his cart and walked toward the front of the store, his sneakers squeaking against the polished linoleum. The customer service desk stood empty, its computer screens glowing blue in the darkness. Behind it, the security office door hung open, revealing nothing but blackness within. "Janet," he called again, louder this time. The intercom crackled to life again. "Clean up on aisle 4. Clean up on aisle 4. But aisle 4 was spotless. Marcus had mopped it himself just an hour ago. His heart began to hammer against his ribs as he made his way down the main corridor, past the pharmacy with its metal grate pulled down, past the photo center with its dusty instant photo machine that hadn't worked in years. The smell hit him before he saw anything else. It was the stench of spoiled meat, thick and cloying, hanging in the air like a putrid fog. As he rounded the corner into aisle 4, Marcus saw what the announcement had been referring to. Janet lay sprawled between the breakfast cereals and the coffee, her limbs twisted at impossible angles. Her security uniform was torn and stained with something dark that reflected the overhead lights like oil. Her eyes stared at the ceiling, wide and glassy, but it was her mouth that made Marcus stumble backward in horror. It was stretched impossibly wide, as if something had tried to crawl out from inside her throat. Marcus fumbled for his phone, hands shaking as he dialed 911. The call wouldn't go through. No signal. That was impossible, he'd had full bars just minutes ago. "Help me," a voice whispered from somewhere behind him. Marcus spun around, but the aisle was empty. The voice had been female, young, terrified. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Clean up on aisle 7. Clean up on aisle 7. His aisle. Where he'd been working just minutes before. Marcus ran, his feet slipping on the polished floor as he raced back through the store. The lights seemed dimmer now, flickering occasionally and casting dancing shadows that moved independent of their sources. When he reached aisle 7, old Pete was there. Or what was left of him. The elderly man hung suspended from the ceiling, caught in what looked like enormous spider webs that stretched between the shelves. The strands were thick and glistening, pulsing with an organic rhythm that made Marcus's stomach lurch. Pete's body swayed gently, and Marcus could see that his chest was moving up and down in shallow, rapid breaths. He was still alive. "Pete!" Marcus shouted, grabbing a step ladder from the end cap display. "Hold on, I'm coming." As he climbed toward the trapped man, Pete's eyes snapped open and fixed on him with desperate intensity. His mouth moved, but only a wheezing sound emerged. Then Marcus saw why. Something was writhing in Pete's throat, a dark shape that pulsed and twisted beneath the skin of his neck. The webs began to vibrate, sending tremors through the entire structure. From somewhere in the darkness above the drop ceiling, Marcus heard a sound that made his blood freeze. It was like clicking, a rapid staccato rhythm that grew louder and closer with each passing second. Marcus looked up just as one of the ceiling tiles crashed down beside him, revealing a glimpse of something massive moving in the space above. Something with too many legs and eyes that reflected the light like black mirrors. He ran. Behind him, Pete's strangled screams echoed through the store, but Marcus didn't look back. He sprinted toward the front entrance, his lungs burning and his heart threatening to burst from his chest. The automatic doors were locked, sealed tight despite the green "Open" sign that still glowed above them. The clicking sound was getting closer. Marcus grabbed a shopping cart and rammed it into the glass doors. They didn't even crack. He tried again, putting all his weight behind it, but the impact merely sent reverberations through his arms and shoulders. "Attention shoppers," the intercom crackled. "The store is now closed. Thank you for shopping with us. Have a pleasant evening." The lights went out. In the sudden darkness, Marcus heard the clicking sound multiply. What had been one became two, then four, then dozens. They were coming from everywhere now, the ceiling, the walls, even from beneath the floor. The sound of skittering legs on linoleum mixed with wet, organic noises that spoke of things that should not exist. Marcus felt along the wall until he found the emergency exit. The alarm should have sounded when he pushed the bar, but there was only silence as the door swung open into the parking lot. The night air hit his face like a blessing, cool and clean after the oppressive atmosphere inside the store. Marcus ran across the asphalt, not stopping until he reached his car. His hands shook so badly he could barely get the key in the ignition. As the engine roared to life, he looked back at the store one last time. In the windows, he could see shapes moving. Large, dark forms that seemed to flow like liquid shadow between the aisles. And hanging from the ceiling, suspended in those glistening webs, were more cocoons. Dozens of them, swaying gently in the artificial breeze of the store's ventilation system. Some of them were still moving. Marcus drove straight to the police station, his story spilling out in a torrent of words that sounded insane even to his own ears. The officers listened with expressions of polite skepticism, taking notes and asking questions about stress levels and whether he'd been drinking. They agreed to check out the store. The next morning, Marcus got a call from Detective Rodriguez. Her voice was carefully neutral, professional. "We went to Walmart 4637 last night," she said. "Everything looked normal. Clean, well-stocked, ready for business. We spoke with Janet Martinez, the security guard. She said you never showed up for your shift. She was there all night and never saw you." "That's impossible," Marcus whispered. "I was there. I saw what happened to her. Mr. Henderson, Janet Martinez is fine. She's been working that shift for 12 years without incident. There's no employee named Pete in the produce department. In fact, according to corporate records, there never has been." Marcus hung up the phone and stared at his hands. Under his fingernails, caught in the quick, were strands of something that looked like spider silk. They glistened in the morning light, and when he held them up to examine them more closely, they seemed to pulse with their own internal rhythm. That night, he dreamed of clicking sounds and hanging shadows. When he woke, there was a voicemail on his phone. The number showed as Walmart 4637. "Marcus," the voice said, and it sounded exactly like his own voice, "your shift starts at midnight. Don't be late. We're waiting for you." The message repeated 3 more times, each iteration slightly different. In the second version, his voice sounded strained, desperate. In the third, it was accompanied by that familiar clicking sound. In the fourth, it wasn't his voice at all, but something that had learned to mimic it, something that got the inflections almost right but not quite. Marcus never went back to Walmart 4637. He moved to another state, found work at a small grocery store where the owner knew everyone by name and the night shift meant locking up at 9 p.m. But sometimes, late at night when he's stocking shelves or cleaning floors, he hears the clicking. It starts soft, almost like the sound of settling wood or the whisper of air through ventilation ducts. Then it grows louder, more insistent, until he has to stop what he's doing and listen. And sometimes, just sometimes, he hears his own voice coming through the store's speakers, calling for a cleanup on an aisle that doesn't exist. The locals in his new town whisper about the Walmart that used to sit on the edge of their community. It burned down 20 years ago, they say, in a fire that nobody could explain. The flames had been green, they claimed, and the smoke had moved against the wind. When the fire department finally got the blaze under control, they found things in the ruins that didn't belong in any store. Things with too many legs. Things that had once been people. But Marcus knows the truth. Walmart 4637 didn't burn down. It's still there, waiting in the darkness between spaces, its doors always open to the right kind of customer. And somewhere in those endless aisles, suspended in glistening webs, Janet and old Pete are still working the night shift. Still waiting for someone to join them. The intercom never stops calling for cleanup. And the cleanup never ends. Hashtag the customer who never left. Sarah had worked at Walmart for 6 years, but she'd never encountered anything like the woman in aisle 13. It started on a Tuesday night during the dinner rush. Sarah was restocking the frozen food section when she first noticed her, a middle-aged woman in a faded floral dress, standing motionless in front of the ice cream freezers. Her gray hair hung in greasy strands around her pale face, and she clutched a red shopping basket that appeared to be empty. "Can I help you find something?" Sarah asked, approaching with her usual customer service smile. The woman turned slowly, and Sarah's smile faltered. The woman's eyes were completely white, clouded over like milk, but she seemed to track Sarah's movement perfectly. "I'm looking for my daughter," the woman said in a voice like rustling leaves. "Have you seen my daughter? What does she look like?" Sarah asked, fighting the urge to step backward. "Beautiful. So beautiful. She has my eyes." The woman's mouth stretched into what might have been a smile, revealing teeth stained brown with decay. "She's shopping here somewhere. We came together, but I lost her." Sarah glanced around the aisle, but it was empty except for the two of them. "I haven't seen anyone matching that description, but I can make an announcement over the intercom if you'd like." The woman shook her head slowly. "No need. I'll find her. I always find her." Sarah left the woman there and went about her duties, but something about the encounter bothered her. When she returned to aisle 13 20 minutes later, the woman was still there, in exactly the same position, staring at the same freezer with those milky eyes. "Ma'am?" Sarah called out. "Are you all right?" The woman didn't respond. She didn't even seem to hear her. Sarah approached cautiously and noticed that the woman's skin had a waxy, translucent quality, like old candle wax. Worse still, she couldn't see the woman breathing. "Excuse me," Sarah said louder, reaching out to tap the woman's shoulder. Her hand passed right through. Sarah jerked backward, her heart hammering. She blinked hard and looked again. The woman was solid now, turning that horrible smile in her direction. "Have you seen my daughter?" she asked again, as if their previous conversation had never happened. Sarah mumbled an excuse and fled to the break room, where she found her supervisor, Mike, eating a sandwich. "Mike, there's something weird about the customer in aisle 13, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Mike looked up from his turkey and Swiss. "What kind of weird?" I think she might be having some kind of medical episode. She seems confused, disoriented. And she looks really pale." Mike sighed and stood up. "All right, let's go check it out." They walked back to aisle 13 together, but when they arrived, it was empty. "Where is she?" Mike asked. Sarah stared at the spot where the woman had been standing. "She was right here. I swear she was right here." Mike shrugged. "Maybe she wandered off. Keep an eye out for her, and let me know if she causes any problems." But Sarah knew the woman hadn't wandered off. The aisle had only one exit, and they would have seen her leave. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. Over the next few days, Sarah began to notice the woman everywhere. She would catch glimpses of her in her peripheral vision, standing at the end of an aisle, reflected in the security mirrors, lurking behind displays of seasonal merchandise. But whenever Sarah looked directly, the woman would be gone. Other employees started mentioning her too. Tom from electronics said he'd seen a woman in a floral dress standing in front of the TV wall at 3 in the morning, staring at the screens even though they were all turned off. Jessica from the deli claimed she'd served a pale woman who had ordered sliced ham but disappeared before paying, leaving only the smell of something rotten behind. "I think we might have a shoplifter," Mike told Sarah during their weekly team meeting. Several employees have reported seeing this woman, but nobody's been able to approach her or get a good look at what she's taking. Sarah wanted to tell him that the woman wasn't shoplifting, that something far stranger was happening, but she knew how crazy it would sound. Instead, she volunteered to work extra hours to help catch the mysterious customer. It was during one of those extra shifts, late on a Thursday night, that Sarah finally learned the truth. She was working alone in the grocery section when she heard a child crying. The sound echoed through the empty store, high and desperate. Sarah followed the sound through the aisles, past towering displays of cereal and canned goods, until she reached the toy section. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, sat on the floor between the bicycles and the board games. She wore a white dress that might have once been pretty but was now stained with something dark. Her long brown hair fell across her face as she sobbed. "Hey, sweetie," Sarah said gently, kneeling down beside the child. "Are you lost? Where are your parents?" The little girl looked up, and Sarah gasped. The child's eyes were the same milky white as the woman in the floral dress, but her face was young and unmarked by age. She was beautiful, just as the woman had said. "My mommy is looking for me," the girl whispered. "She's always looking for me." "Your mommy? Is she the lady in the flowered dress?" The girl nodded. "She can't find me because I'm hiding. I don't want to go home with her." "Why not, honey?" "Because she's not really my mommy anymore." The girl's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "She's something else. Something that wears my mommy's face." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. "What do you mean?" "We died in a car accident 3 years ago," the girl said matter-of-factly. "Right outside in the parking lot. A truck ran a red light and hit us while we were walking to the store. Mommy died first, but I lived for a few minutes. Long enough to crawl inside and hide." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "I'm dead," the girl confirmed. "But I don't want to go wherever dead people are supposed to go. I like it here. It's warm and bright, and there are toys and candy and all the things I liked when I was alive." "And your mother?" The girl's expression darkened. "The thing that looks like my mother wants to take me away. It says we belong together, that death shouldn't separate us. But it's wrong. It's not her. It's something hungry that ate her up from the inside and learned to wear her skin." As if summoned by their conversation, the woman in the floral dress appeared at the end of the aisle. She moved differently now, her limbs jerking like a marionette controlled by an inexperienced puppeteer. "There you are," she said, and her voice was like gravel scraping against concrete. "I've been looking everywhere for you, my darling." The little girl scrambled to her feet and ran to Sarah, clutching at her uniform shirt with fingers that felt ice-cold through the fabric. "Don't let her take me," the girl pleaded. "Please don't let her take me." The woman began walking toward them, and with each step, her appearance deteriorated. Her skin became more waxy and transparent, revealing the dark shapes moving beneath. Her smile stretched wider than any human mouth should be able to, and Sarah could see rows of needle-sharp teeth behind the brown stumps. "She belongs with me," the thing said. "Death is a family affair." Sarah stood up, pulling the girl behind her. "Stay back," she said, though her voice shook with terror. The creature that wore the woman's face laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You can't protect her. She's already dead. We're both already dead. This is just borrowed time. I won't go with you, the girl said from behind Sarah. I won't. The creature's face contorted with rage. Then I'll make you come with me. I'll tear this place apart until there's nowhere left to hide. The lights began to flicker overhead. Throughout the store, Sarah could hear the sound of merchandise falling from shelves, of glass breaking and metal groaning. The creature was making good on its threat. There's another way, Sarah said desperately. What if I helped you find peace? Both of you? The creature tilted its head, considering. Peace? You're stuck here because you can't let go of each other. But maybe if you faced what happened, if you accepted it together, you could move on. I don't want to move on, the girl whispered. I want to stay here forever. Honey, Sarah said gently, turning to kneel beside the child, you can't stay here forever. This isn't living. It's just hiding from what comes next. What if what comes next is scary? Sarah took the girl's cold hands in hers. Maybe it is scary. But you know what's scarier? Staying afraid forever. Running from something that loves you. That thing doesn't love me, the girl said, glancing at the creature. No, Sarah agreed. But your real mother did. And maybe she's waiting for you somewhere else, somewhere better than this store. The creature had gone very still, watching their conversation with those terrible white eyes. I miss my real mommy, the girl said quietly. I know you do. And I bet she misses you too. The girl looked at the creature, then back at Sarah. Will you come with us? Just to make sure it's okay. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. I can't, sweetie. I'm still alive. I don't belong where you're going. The girl nodded solemnly, then walked over to the creature. As she approached, the horrible thing began to change. Its features softened, becoming more human. The waxy skin took on a healthier color, and the needle teeth disappeared behind normal human lips. Mommy, the girl asked hesitantly. Yes, baby, the woman said, and now her voice was warm and loving. I'm here. I'm sorry I scared you. I didn't want to lose you. I don't want to be lost anymore, the girl said. The woman knelt down and embraced her daughter. As they held each other, both figures began to grow translucent, fading like morning mist. Thank you, the woman said to Sarah, and her gratitude was genuine. Thank you for helping us remember. And then they were gone. Sarah stood alone in the toy aisle, surrounded by the normal sounds of the store, the hum of fluorescent lights, the distant rumble of the freezer units, the soft music playing over the speakers. Everything was as it should be. The next morning, she looked up the accident reports from 3 years ago. She found it in the local newspaper archives, a mother and daughter killed in the Walmart parking lot when a drunk driver ran a red light. The mother, Patricia Daniels, 42. The daughter, Emma Daniels, 8. The article mentioned that Emma had survived the initial impact and had crawled toward the store entrance before succumbing to her injuries. Witnesses said she kept asking for her mother, not understanding that her mother was already gone. Sarah printed out the article and kept it in her locker. Sometimes, when she worked the late shift and the store felt too quiet, she would take it out and read it again. A reminder that even in death, love could become twisted by grief and fear, but that it could also be redeemed by understanding and compassion. She never saw Patricia or Emma again, but sometimes, on particularly peaceful nights, she thought she could feel their presence, not haunting the store, but watching over it, grateful spirits ensuring that no other lost souls would be trapped there as they had been. The customer who never left had finally found her way home. #the rollback. Danny Martinez thought he'd hit the jackpot when he got hired as an overnight stalker at the new Walmart supercenter. The pay was decent, the hours meant he could attend college during the day, and best of all, the store was so new that everything still had that fresh retail smell instead of the usual mix of industrial cleaner and human desperation. What Danny didn't know was that the store had been built on the site of Mercy General Hospital, which had been demolished after a gas leak explosion killed 43 patients and staff in 1987. The city had covered it up, calling it a structural failure, and sold the land cheap to Walmart's developers 30 years later. Some prices, Danny would learn, were too good to be true. The first sign something was wrong came during his third week on the job. Danny was restocking the pharmacy section around 3 a.m. when he heard the sound of squeaking wheels echoing through the store. He looked up from the boxes of aspirin he'd been shelving to see an old hospital gurney rolling slowly down the main aisle. The gurney was empty, its white sheets pristine and tucked with military precision. It moved with purpose, navigating around display stands and promotional end caps as if guided by invisible hands. Danny watched in stunned silence as it turned down aisle 12 and disappeared from view. "Hey, Kevin." Danny called to his coworker, who was supposed to be working electronics. "Did you see that?" No response. The store's music continued its mindless loop, punctuated only by the distant hum of the refrigeration units. Danny abandoned his cart and followed the path the gurney had taken. Aisle 12 was the health and beauty section, shampoo, toothpaste, bandages, and over-the-counter medications arranged in neat rows under harsh fluorescent lighting. The gurney was nowhere to be seen. But at the far end of the aisle, near the pharmacy counter, Danny found something that made his blood run cold. Wet footprints led from where the gurney had disappeared, continuing past the prescription pickup window and vanishing at the wall. The footprints were small, like those of a child, and they left behind not water but something thick and dark that gleamed under the lights. Danny's phone buzzed. A text from Kevin, sick. Had to leave. You're on your own tonight. That was impossible. Danny had just called out to Kevin, and there had been no response. He checked the timestamp on the message. It had been sent 6 hours ago, before Danny's shift had even started. The realization hit him like ice water in his veins. He was completely alone in the massive store. The squeaking sound returned, louder now and coming from multiple directions. Danny spun in a circle, trying to pinpoint the source, but the acoustics of the cavernous space made it impossible to tell where the noise originated. It seemed to bounce off the walls and ceiling, creating an echo chamber of phantom wheels and creaking metal. Then he saw them. 3 gurneys rolled in formation down the main aisle, moving in perfect synchronization. Unlike the first one, these weren't empty. Shapes lay beneath their sheets, human forms in various sizes. One was clearly adult-sized, lying perfectly still. Another was smaller, child-sized, and the sheet over its face was stained with something dark. The third was somewhere in between, and as it passed under a light fixture, Danny could see the outline of what looked like medical equipment still attached to the body beneath. The gurneys turned toward him. Danny ran. He sprinted toward the front of the store, his sneakers slapping against the polished linoleum. Behind him, the squeaking grew louder and more frantic, joined by other sounds, the electronic beeping of medical monitors, the hiss of oxygen tanks, and underneath it all, the sound of labored breathing. The automatic doors at the front entrance remained stubbornly closed as Danny approached. He slammed his hands against the glass, but they wouldn't budge. The motion sensors seemed to be inactive, their red lights dark. Even the manual override switch behind the customer service counter did nothing. "Help!" Danny shouted, pounding on the glass. "Somebody help me!" The parking lot outside was empty except for his beat-up Honda Civic and the security lights that cast everything in sickly yellow pools. No one was coming to help. No one even knew he was in trouble. The squeaking stopped. Danny turned around slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. The gurneys had arranged themselves in a semicircle around him, blocking his escape routes. The sheets that covered their occupants had begun to move, rising and falling with the rhythm of artificial respiration. "Please," Danny whispered to no one in particular. "Please, I just need to get out of here." The sheet on the smallest gurney slipped, revealing a pale hand that couldn't have belonged to anyone older than 10. The fingers were blue-tinged and waxy, but as Danny watched in horror, they began to move, grasping at the air with desperate, reaching motions. A voice came from beneath the sheet, muffled but clearly audible, "It hurts. Make it stop hurting." The adult-sized gurney's occupant began to speak as well, its voice a wet, rattling wheeze, "The gas, can't breathe, can't breathe." And from the third gurney came a sound that barely qualified as human speech, more like air escaping from a punctured lung, help us get better." Danny backed against the glass doors, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. These weren't just ghosts or hallucinations, they were the victims of the hospital explosion, somehow still trapped in this place, still experiencing their final moments over and over again. "I don't know how to help you," Danny said, his voice cracking. "I'm not a doctor. I just stock shelves." The child's hand stopped grasping and pointed toward the pharmacy section. "Medicine," the small voice said. "Need medicine." Danny looked toward the pharmacy counter, its metal security grate pulled down for the night. Even if he could get in there, he had no idea what medicines these spirits would need, or if earthly drugs could even help beings that were already dead. But what choice did he have? Danny grabbed a shopping cart and ran toward the pharmacy, the gurneys following close behind. Their wheels created a cacophony of squeaks and rattles that echoed through the store like a mechanical symphony of the damned. At the pharmacy counter, Danny vaulted over the barrier and landed hard on the tile floor behind the prescription filling area. The space was cramped and sterile, filled with rows of medication bottles and computerized dispensing systems that hummed quietly in the darkness. "What do you need?" Danny called out to the spirits. "What medicine?" "Morphine," gasped the adult voice. "For the pain." "Oxygen," wheezed another. "Can't breathe." "Something to make me sleep," whispered the child. "I'm so tired, but I can't sleep." Danny's hands shook as he searched through the medication storage. He found bottles of morphine, tanks of medical oxygen, and sleep aids, but as he reached for them, his fingers passed right through the containers. He couldn't touch them, couldn't move them, couldn't help in any concrete way. "I can't," he said desperately. "I can't touch them. I can't help you." The temperature in the store began to drop. Danny could see his breath misting in the suddenly frigid air. The fluorescent lights flickered and dimmed, casting everything in a sickly, unstable glow. "Then you'll stay with us," the child's voice said, and now it carried a note of anger that chilled Danny more than the supernatural cold. "You'll be our friend. Forever and ever." The gurneys began to close in, their occupants becoming more active beneath their sheets. Danny could see arms and legs moving, heads turning, bodies trying to sit up despite being constrained by medical equipment that existed only in memory. "Wait," Danny said, backing against the pharmacy computer terminal. "Wait, maybe I can help in a different way." The movement stopped. "How?" the adult voice demanded. Danny's mind raced. These spirits were trapped here, reliving their trauma over and over. They needed release, not medicine. They needed someone to acknowledge what had happened to them, to remember them, to ensure their deaths hadn't been forgotten or covered up. "People need to know," Danny said. "About what really happened at the hospital. About how you died. The truth was covered up, wasn't it?" The temperature in the store began to warm slightly. "Gas leak," the adult voice confirmed. They knew the pipes were bad, didn't fix them, saved money instead. "And when it exploded, they blamed structural failure," Danny continued, pieces of the story falling into place. "They didn't want to pay the lawsuits, so they covered it up and sold the land." "Forgot us," the child whispered. "Everyone forgot us." Danny pulled out his phone. The screen showed no signal bars, but maybe He opened the voice memo app and began to record. "My name is Danny Martinez, and I'm recording this at Walmart Supercenter on Maple Street at 3:47 a.m. on October 15th. I'm speaking to the spirits of victims who died in the Mercy General Hospital explosion in 1987. The official cause was listed as structural failure, but that was a cover-up. The real cause was a gas leak that the hospital administration knew about but failed to repair." As Danny spoke, he felt the presence of the spirits drawing closer, but not in a threatening way. They were listening, finally being heard after decades of silence. "Tell me your names," Danny said. "Tell me who you were." "Sarah Chen," whispered the child. "I was 8. I had leukemia." "Marcus Williams," said the adult voice. "Nurse on the 3rd floor. 26 years old. I was going to get married next month." "Dr. Elizabeth Reeves," came the third voice, clearer now. "I was trying to evacuate patients when the explosion happened. I stayed behind to help." Danny recorded everything, their names, their ages, their stories. He promised to research the incident, to find their families, to make sure the truth came out. As he spoke, the gurneys began to fade, becoming translucent in the fluorescent light. "Thank you," Sarah whispered, her small voice growing distant. "Thank you for remembering us." The gurneys disappeared completely, leaving Danny alone in the pharmacy. The light stopped flickering, the temperature returned to normal, and the oppressive atmosphere that had filled the store lifted like a weight being removed from his shoulders. Danny climbed back over the pharmacy counter and made his way to the front of the store. This time, the automatic doors opened without resistance, letting in the cool night air and the distant sound of traffic on the highway. He spent the rest of his shift researching the Mercy General incident on his phone, finding archived newspaper articles and public records that had been buried but not destroyed. The official story was exactly as the spirits had said, a cover-up to avoid liability. Danny kept his promise. He contacted investigative journalists, reached out to victims' families, and shared the recordings he'd made. Within months, the story broke nationally. Lawsuits were filed, settlements were reached, and a memorial was erected in the Walmart parking lot to honor the 43 people who had died. Danny quit his job at Walmart soon after. He couldn't bring himself to work there anymore, knowing what lay beneath the cheerful facade of rollback prices and smiley faces. But sometimes, late at night, he would drive by the store and see other employees through the windows, stocking shelves and going about their duties, unaware of the history beneath their feet. He never saw the gurneys again, but he kept the voice recordings on his phone as a reminder that some things were more important than convenience and low prices. Some debts could only be paid with truth, and some customers would never be satisfied until justice was served. The real rollback, Danny learned, wasn't about prices at all. It was about rolling back the lies and letting the dead finally rest in peace. #always low prices, always. Lisa Chen had been shopping at the Walmart on Henderson Road for 15 years, ever since she'd moved to town with her husband Mark. She knew every aisle, every shortcut, every cashier by name. It was her weekly ritual, Saturday morning grocery runs while Mark slept in and the kids watched cartoons. But something had changed in the past month. It started with the prices. Lisa prided herself on being a savvy shopper, clipping coupons and tracking sales with the dedication of a Wall Street analyst. She knew the regular price of everything she bought, down to the penny. So when she noticed that her usual brands were getting cheaper each week, she was initially delighted. Ground beef that used to cost $4.99 per pound was now $3.49. Tide detergent had dropped from $12.97 to $8.50. Even organic produce, which had always been prohibitively expensive, was suddenly affordable. Lisa filled her cart with items she'd previously considered luxuries, marveling at her good fortune. Must be some kind of promotion, she told her neighbor Carol over the fence. competition with that new Target that opened across town. But as the weeks went by, the prices kept dropping. Not just on sale items, but on everything. Lisa's grocery bill, which typically ran around $200 for her family of 4, had shrunk to $85, then $60, then an impossible $30 for a full week's worth of food. Other customers seemed to be experiencing the same phenomenon. The parking lot was more crowded than ever, filled with people who looked dazed and euphoric, pushing overflowing carts toward their cars with the glazed expressions of lottery winners. Lisa should have been thrilled. Instead, she felt a growing sense of unease that she couldn't shake. The feeling intensified during her Saturday trip in the 4th week of the price drops. Lisa was in the produce section, marveling at organic strawberries marked at 89 cents per container, when she overheard 2 employees talking in hushed voices. "Corporates losing their minds over the numbers," one was saying. "Stores operating at a 90% loss, but customers keep coming. Manager told me not to worry about it," the other replied. "Said it's all part of some new business model they're testing." Lisa pretended to examine the bananas while she listened. "My cousin works at the distribution center," the first employee continued. "Says they're not shipping nearly enough product to account for what we're selling. Numbers don't add up. Where's it all coming from then? That's what I'd like to know." Lisa's unease deepened. She'd noticed the same thing herself, the shelves never seemed to empty, no matter how much people bought. Even during the busiest shopping days, every product was always in stock, as if the store had access to an infinite supply of merchandise. That's when she started paying closer attention to the other shoppers. Mrs. Patterson from down the street was there, as always, but something was different about her. The elderly woman moved through the aisles with mechanical precision, filling her cart with the same items in the same order every time. When Lisa tried to greet her, Mrs. Patterson looked right through her with vacant, glassy eyes. The Hendersons, the young couple from the apartment complex, were in the breakfast cereal aisle, moving in perfect synchronization as they loaded box after box of cornflakes into their cart. They moved like robots, their faces expressionless, their movements unnaturally fluid. Lisa began to notice it everywhere, shoppers who seemed to be going through the motions without any conscious thought behind their actions. They filled their carts methodically, paid without counting their change, and left with the same empty stares she'd seen on Mrs. Patterson's face. But it was the children who frightened her most. In the toys section, Lisa watched a little boy, maybe 7 years old, standing motionless in front of the action figures. His mother stood behind him, equally still, both staring at the same display with unblinking intensity. Lisa timed them. They stood there for 23 minutes without moving, without speaking, without even seeming to breathe. When Lisa walked past them again on her way to checkout, they were gone. But their cart remained, filled with dozens of identical action figures, all the same character, all facing the same direction. The checkout experience was equally disturbing. The cashier, a teenager named Brandon whom Lisa had known since he was hired 2 years ago, scanned her items with robotic efficiency. His usual friendly chatter was gone, replaced by a mechanical litany of prices and totals. "That'll be $12.47, he said in a monotone voice. Lisa handed him a $20 bill and waited for her change. Brandon stared at the register display for a long moment, then looked at Lisa with eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Keep shopping," he said instead of giving her the change. "Always shopping. Always buying. Always low prices, always. Brandon? Are you feeling all right?" The teenager blinked slowly, as if waking from a trance. "Oh, hey Mrs. Chen. Sorry, here's your change." He handed her the bills and coins, but his movements were jerky, unnatural. Lisa left the store feeling deeply unsettled. She sat in her car for several minutes, watching other customers emerge from the building. They all had the same expression, a kind of blissful emptiness, as if they'd been hollowed out and filled with something else. That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the impossible prices, the endless inventory, the zombie-like behavior of the other shoppers. Around 3 a.m., she gave up on rest and decided to drive past the store, just to see what it looked like in the middle of the night. The parking lot was full. Cars filled every space, and people moved between them and the store entrance in a steady stream. But these weren't normal shoppers. They moved in perfect formation, like ants following invisible trails. Their faces were blank, their movements coordinated in a way that suggested some kind of hive mind. Lisa parked across the street and watched in horrified fascination. The people entering the store were the same ones she'd seen during the day: Mrs. Patterson, the Hendersons, dozens of other familiar faces from her neighborhood. They filed into the building with mechanical precision, emerged with full carts, loaded their cars, and then went back inside to start the process over again. They were shopping continuously, 24 hours a day, in an endless loop of consumption. Lisa's hands shook as she reached for her phone to call the police. But before she could dial, her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Join US. Always low prices. Always happy customers. Always shopping. She looked up to see several of the zombie shoppers standing around her car, their faces pressed against the windows, their empty eyes staring at her with predatory hunger. Mrs. Patterson was among them, her wrinkled face twisted into an expression of mindless need. Lisa started her car and drove away as fast as she could, but the text messages kept coming. Resistance is expensive. Shopping is happiness. Join the family. Join the savings. Always low prices, always. Each message was followed by images, photos of Lisa's house, her family, her children sleeping in their beds. Someone, or something, was watching her. Lisa drove to the police station, but it was closed. The night duty officer was probably making his rounds. She tried calling the non-emergency line, but got only a recorded message directing her to visit during normal business hours or call 911 for emergencies. But was this really an emergency? What would she even tell them? That the local Walmart was turning people into shopping zombies? That impossible discounts were somehow connected to mind control? They'd think she was having a mental breakdown. As Lisa sat in the police station parking lot, trying to decide what to do next, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Officer Martinez's patrol car was parked in front of the station, but through the windows, she could see shopping bags from Walmart. Dozens of them, filling the entire back seat. Even the police were affected. Lisa drove home, her mind racing. She needed to protect her family, but she didn't know how. Whatever was happening at Walmart seemed to be spreading through the entire community like a virus, converting normal people into mindless consumers. When she arrived home, Mark was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and several Walmart shopping bags at his feet. "Where have you been?" he asked, but his voice had that same flat, emotionless quality she'd heard from Brandon. "Just couldn't sleep," Lisa said carefully. "Went for a drive." Mark nodded and returned his attention to something he was holding, a Walmart receipt that seemed unusually long. "Look at this," he said. "I saved us so much money today. Got everything we need for the next month. Only cost $43. Lisa looked at the receipt. It was easily 6 feet long, covered in tiny print listing hundreds of items. Food, clothing, electronics, household goods, things they'd never bought, brands she'd never heard of, quantities that would fill their entire house. "Mark, we don't need all this stuff," Lisa said. "Where is it all?" "In the garage," Mark replied without looking up from the receipt. "Stacked nice and neat. Organized by category. Just like at the store." Lisa walked to the garage and opened the door. The space was packed floor to ceiling with merchandise, all of it arranged with the same mechanical precision she'd seen in the zombie shoppers. Canned goods in perfect pyramids, clothing folded and sorted by size and color, electronics still in their packaging, toys arranged in neat rows. It was like a miniature Walmart warehouse. She found Mark's car keys and checked the odometer. He'd driven 147 miles since yesterday, exactly the distance required for 7 round trips to Walmart. Lisa ran back into the house to find Mark exactly where she'd left him, still staring at the receipt with those empty, satisfied eyes. "Mark," she said urgently. "Mark, look at me." He turned his head slowly, and for just a moment, she saw a flicker of her real husband behind those vacant eyes. "Lisa," he whispered. "Something's wrong with me. I can't stop. I can't stop buying things. It's like I need them, even though I don't know what they're for." The moment of clarity passed, and the emptiness returned. "But the prices are so good," he continued in that flat voice. "Always low prices, always. We're saving so much money." Lisa backed away from him, her heart pounding. If Mark was affected, what about the kids? She ran upstairs to check on them, praying she wasn't too late. She found them in their rooms, awake despite the early hour, surrounded by toys they'd never owned before. Her 8-year-old daughter Emma was arranging dolls in precise rows, her movements mechanical and repetitive. Her 6-year-old son Jake was building something with blocks, but the structure he was creating was geometric and alien, like nothing a child would naturally build. "Emma, Jake," Lisa called softly. "It's time for breakfast." They turned to look at her with those same empty eyes she'd seen on everyone else. "We're not hungry, Mommy," Emma said in a voice devoid of childish enthusiasm. "We're organizing our purchases. Everything must be in its proper place." Lisa felt tears streaming down her face. Her entire family had been taken from her, converted into something else, something that valued consumption over connection. She was the only one left. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She was immune to whatever was affecting everyone else, which meant she was also completely alone. In a town full of people she'd known for years, she was the only one who remained herself. Her phone buzzed again. Another text message. "Last chance. Join willingly or be converted. Resistance is futile. Shopping is eternal." Lisa looked out her bedroom window and saw them coming. Dozens of zombie shoppers walking up her street in perfect formation, their arms swinging in unison, their faces blank with artificial contentment. Mrs. Patterson was leading them, still clutching a Walmart shopping bag in her arthritic hands. They surrounded her house, standing motionless on her lawn like an army of mannequins. Mark and the children joined them, filing out of the house without a word and taking their places in the formation. Lisa was trapped. As the sun rose over her suburban neighborhood, she watched from her window as more and more people joined the crowd. Teachers, doctors, police officers, friends, neighbors, everyone she'd ever known in this town, all standing in silent vigil, waiting for her to surrender. Her phone buzzed one final time. "Walmart appreciates your patience. A customer representative will be with you shortly. Remember, always low prices, always." Lisa laughed bitterly at the corporate speak. Even in this nightmare scenario, they couldn't abandon their customer service training. She had a choice to make. She could give in, let whatever force was controlling everyone else take her too. It would be easy, peaceful even. No more fear, no more resistance, just endless shopping and artificial happiness. Or she could fight back. Lisa walked to her home office and turned on her computer. If she was going to resist, she needed to understand what she was fighting. She began researching the Walmart Corporation, looking for anything that might explain what was happening. What she found in the deepest corners of the internet chilled her to the bone. Stories from other towns, other cities, other countries. Always the same pattern, gradually decreasing prices, increasingly addictive shopping experiences, and entire communities that slowly transformed into consumption-obsessed zombies. But the stories always ended the same way, with the complete disappearance of the affected towns from maps and records, as if they'd never existed at all. Lisa realized she wasn't just fighting for her own soul. She was fighting for the memory of everyone she'd ever loved, everyone who had already been consumed by the thing that wore Walmart's cheerful corporate mask. Outside her window, the zombie shoppers continued their silent vigil, waiting with infinite patience for her to join them in eternal consumption. But Lisa Chen had never been much of a shopper anyway.